let's talk about some of the other fight announcements that have been made. I want to get through these real quick and then kind of get on to something, not really like Bellator or MMA, like professional MMA related, right? More just like, what are you guys doing in quarantine to keep up with like your training and shit like that? But I want to go through these fight announcements real quick because there's some really interesting ones. Hannah Cyphers is gonna. I got all these from MMA Junkie, by the way. I don't ever pretend to be like a journalist. That I'm just a fucking fan, man. I'm not like report. I'm just giving you my opinions on what the fuck everybody else reports. So I'm basically doing nothing, right? But Hannah Cyphers is going to be fighting Mackenzie Dern on May 23rd. Eric Anders is fighting Christoph Jocko on May 16th. Carl Robertson versus Marvin Vittori on May 13th. Arlovsky versus Felipe Lins on May 13th. And then Anthony Hernandez and Kevin Holland on May 16th. And if you're wondering, man, those events sound like they're squeezed really tight together. Like those dates they are. The UFC is going to be putting on, I think it's 3 events in 8 days, right? And then they take a 1-week break before putting on the event on May 23rd. And a lot of the headliners are to be determined, but they're slowly building these cards. You know, all this coronavirus shit, there's been a lot of like talk about whether Dana White is doing the right thing. And I don't want to get in to like the moral debate about whether it's right or not, right? But I think this is what I think about Dana White. I think that if you look back over the UFC's history, Dana White just strictly always does what's best for business. Whatever's best for the UFC as a brand. And you can't deny that when people have, and especially now that tensions have eased up a little bit surrounding the virus, I think we're starting to find out that fatality rates are a little bit lower than we originally thought. And people are kind of wanting to get back to a normal way of life. Like people are getting fed up with the shit kind of, right? And when you think about normal life, you don't realize it till it's gone, but you don't realize, like, live sports are so ingrained into our culture. Every time you go to the bar, every time like it's on ESPN, people are, even if they're not on, people are talking about it, right? And when it's gone, it feels like something's missing. Like I think just we love competition. So when you get to see it, like, you know what I mean? You don't realize how weird life is without it. So what Dana White is trying to do is capitalize on that. Because people, like I said, and he's going to get a huge audience because there are going to be so many people who are just sitting around and they're going to tune into fighting just because it's the only live sport on. There's something about it being live, right? Like you can watch replays of the same fucking Super Bowl over and over and over again, but it'll never be as exciting. It'll never feel the same as when you're watching it live. If Dana White can get on, he's dominating that market and he's going to get a ton of traction. And like, if you just look back at his track record and like the things that he's been criticized for doing, it always pays off for the UFC. Like his decision to kind of, everybody criticized him because he wanted to move to the Reebok deal, right? And it was going to affect fighter pay and it was going to do this and it was going to do that. But I mean, they're on ESPN now, man. And if you look back at when like, I don't know, I think about like Frankie Edgar fights and stuff, right? And they've got all these things. He's got like his fucking Iron Army or whatever it is plastered all over his shorts, and it's all like on. It looks bad, man. And I didn't mean to call Frankie. I just thought of Frankie Edgar because like he's one of my favorite fighters, and I think back to like, I used to always make sure I tune into his fights because I went to the same college as him, right? And I think about like how bad that looks compared to like the UFC, the gear that they have now. It's like, man. It's way better. It's way better. So he's always thinking in terms of like, I think he's putting all the moral shit aside and saying what's best for the UFC, you know, and this is best for the UFC. There's no denying that people are going to tune in and watch that shit. And he's going to maybe gain some new fans. So it's a big deal. And you know, it almost still feels like, I almost feel like it's still not real. I almost feel like I'm like, is this really going to happen? But I don't know. We'll see. So far, so good. People seem to be committing to it. You've got guys like Rogan announcing it. Alec seems pretty excited about it on his social media and stuff. So, I mean, it seems like it's going to fucking happen.